arrangements, the festivals, the packages that are put together, we have to take it at face value in the sense that there is a committee responsible for arranging the events.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Naturally, Tobago would have their own formula because it's a different subculture. Although it's Trinidad and Tobago, I mean, those of us who go to Tobago from time to time would easily recognize that Tobago have their own taste and their own way of presenting themselves.
That's right.
So, and I appreciate it for what it is. I mean, I guess I'm sick for saying this on the air, but um, when I listen to the steel band music coming out of Tobago and that in Trinidad,
Mm-hmm.
there is a disparity. Um, Barring the top band,
Yeah,
um, because they produced the medium band winner for the last few years.
that's right.
Um, so it's no criticism of me in any way to say that the product that is steel band music coming out of Tobago is in any way incomparable to Trinidad. It's just generally like everything else. If we take a band that is up and coming, naturally they will have certain teething issues to deal with before they get to the level of, let us say, a large band.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so when we go to Tobago, naturally we expect that the version of what is presented may not be on all four squares with the product that is in Trinidad, but that's an unfair comparison because I take every island and every product that is on public display to the value that it is in that moment. I'm not saying that we accept whatever is there. I'm not saying that if something isn't good, don't say it isn't good. But it seems that and I'm quoting what is in the Triad news there. The newspapers quoted Tuesday, October 31st. I like to quote the papers because I don't want the public feel that I have an axe to grind or are taking a side in an argument. An article written by Corey Connelly, Dr. Charleston Thomas, the technical advisor in the THA Division of Tourism, Culture, Antiquities and Transportation. He went on to categorically reject criticism by the National Carnival Commission Chairman Winston Jiffy Peters of the organization of this year's Tobago Carnival. Um, so it seems that straight out of the pack, before there's any forensic analysis of the product of the festival being done quietly, and then you present an audited position. Um, Mr. Peters seemed to have, if it is Connelly is quoted incorrectly, seemed to have taken umbrage with what Tobago produced and said that they need to work closely with the National Carnival Commission. So clearly, what is being communicated in the newspaper here is that Tobago went and do their own thing, and that they didn't merge with the parent body, the National Carnival Commission, or they didn't liaise with them, and hence the product wasn't what was expected or what ought to be on public display. Naturally, Tobago don't take lasher. They don't take no. You can't throw nothing there and expect that they can stay quiet and roll over and take it.
Yeah.
There was a response. Mr. Thomas categorically said that he reached out to Davlin Thomas, who is the NCC deputy chairman, and he reached out to Mr. Peters for assistance. They made arrangements, meaning Tobago asked that costumes from Trinidad be catered to in terms of the transportation from Trinidad across the Tobago. They asked for input. I understand that the NCC gave certain undertakings that they will get involved, and then they never delivered. Now, of course, again, I'm saying this is what is carried in the article, Tuesday, October 31st, 2023, page 9 of the Trinidad Newsday. It will be interesting to hear what, if I may say, Mr. Peters has to say in response to what Mr. Thomas said. But all in all, were you able to go across to Tobago? Were you following what's happening out there?
No. I just got information on my phone and what I heard people say about the carnival in Tobago. This wrangling that you're talking about, I find it to be strange, and I'll have to get deeper into that and find out, so I can personally come to a decision myself.
Yeah.
Because Tobagonians like to be unique, in whatever they're doing. They like to be unique. And carnival is carnival. Um, if the NCC as a National Carnival Commission sets rules and regulations for carnival, Trinidad and Tobago style, well then there'll be a difference with they being unique and different, or unique within the same framework of the rules and regulations of the NCC. So I have to hear both of them and probably make a comment. I can't comment right now because I don't know what's the big difference or what they did differently.
But let me do some quoting again now. Um, I'm reading the article. It says here that on this year's festival, um, it is said that discussions took place between Peters, which is the head of the NCC, the chairman of the NCC, Culture Secretary Tasha Burris, NCC Deputy Chairman Davlin Thomas. So three persons. These are the top ranking people. And they say that the NCC, Thomas claimed, agreed to help with the road management and getting large costumes across the Tobago. Thomas meaning Charleston. Thomas is the advisor to the THA Division of Tourism, Culture, Antiquities and Transportation. So he said he got undertakings from the parties that be, meaning Davlin Thomas, Tasha Burris, Winston Gypsy Peters. He got undertakings telling that they will help with road management and getting large costumes across the Tobago. Well, let's deal with the road management part of it. Like everything else, you know, I'm deeply attached to the steel band in my own emotional stream. I was reading where Panchenbego's president came out and she said that whilst the steel bands were performing on the street, there was a concert that they were preparing for in Shaw Park involving the artist's voice. And what she was disturbed about is she didn't get enough police presence in that vicinity and that area that the steel bands were performing in, and vehicles were driving in between the bands.
Okay.
So could you imagine you have players? Now I would imagine it would be stateside amongst, it wouldn't be any 100 players playing on the road, but let us say we have a stateside performance taking place and a number of steel bands. When you have transport vehicles, motor vehicles driving between that, and you have, you know, the spectators, the patrons, the well-wishers, the people, I would even go so far to say, well, local and foreign tourists.
Yeah.
And they have to be stepping aside in order to deal with oncoming traffic. That doesn't render well for a good product. I don't think that anybody would be pleased to know that traffic is flowing while the steel band is performing. I would imagine that, you know, in Trinidad, what we say, there's a roadblock where you block the road and you simply redirect the traffic in another area to keep the area free. If something as basic as that wasn't done, then it makes one wonder what was the arrangement between the Tobago police, or what was the directive they got in relation to those performances there. So it seems like there is an organizational problem. According to Charleston Thomas, and it seemed like Ramsey Moore, she would have echoed his sentiments. Whether they collaborated or not, it's the same picture that they painted of road management, which is the responsibility of not just the police, but by the input from the National Carnival Commission. That sort of input didn't take place. That chemistry, that communication never occurred. And we had that sort of interruption. One would think that first of all, let us say that it should not have happened. I think we could agree on the fact that you can't have an event involving culture, involving music, especially a street parade, and at the same time, you haven't taken at minimal level some responsibility for managing the traffic in and around the event.
Well, you know, let me say something here. When it's carnival in Port of Spain, we know there are certain areas, well, most of the areas in Port of Spain are blocked off. You cannot drive through these areas. You'll have a police present, there'll be barriers. on the carnival days in particular, Monday and Tuesday. There are times when they have like children carnival and thing. We have roads that you cannot use, the roads that are being used by the masqueraders and where the bands are passing, they are normally locked off. So why wasn't the same thing implied to Tobago's carnival?
Right.
I mean, that should be understood.
Well, it is. I mean, I agree with you. I totally agree. To me, it's basic. Normally, when there's a function anyway, an hour before the event or half an hour before the event, you see police presence. Then the police will start managing and coordinating the area.
Yeah.
There would be barricades.
Yes.
So at least the traffic would be regulated even before the event starts.
Mm-hmm.
So people would more or less be able to come now and gather in the cordon area and feel free to stand in the road. You could imagine, let us say you're standing on Frederick Street and listening to a steel band.
Mm-hmm.
And in your peripheral vision, with the corner of your eyes, we would see you looking to see if a truck passing. that good. Not only is your attention divided, but
Mm-hmm.
you but it's a risk.
Of course.
It's a risk.
But it's
The
strange to know that they did not implement notices to begin with that these streets will be closed because of these carnival events, or this pan event, or this whatever event pertaining to their carnival. I think notices should have been put up prior to the carnival. So people would have known, listen, come carnival Sunday, there'll be no traffic or no flow of traffic along certain areas or certain streets. The only thing I can say could have been the problem there in Port of Spain is a different ball game because Port of Spain has a lot of streets where you can say, well, detour to this street, and only if the area that this pan event was taking place was a sort of one-way main area. When I say one-way, I mean the only street that it was being taken where this celebration was held, and there was no way of diverting the traffic or making a detour. But I mean, if that was a chosen area for that event, well, then something should have been put in place to avoid that kind of problem. Because I mean, carnival is all about revelry, it's all about drinking and people having fun. I mean, it's not easy to you having fun. You're drinking alcohol in particular, and up comes a vehicle. It could have serious implications there.
Well, luckily we didn't have an incident. God was smiling on us.
Hmm.
Nobody get bounced down. At least there's no reported crime in that regard.
Right, right, right,
But
right. But that is
even
strange. That is strange to see that the heads couldn't come together to know, well, okay, Patrick Baker is hosting an event on this street, and vehicular traffic should have not been allowed to be flowing through the revelers and the pan players also. That could be a big distraction for the pan players also.
well, I've always said something. Let me grab an opportunity to say this. When we had the international Pan Day
Yeah.
in Port of Spain and Woodford Square, I was most present long before the event started.
Right.
Um, it was reported that 5,000 people were inside of Woodford Square.
Yeah. I was there
Um,
too.
right. When when I entered the square an hour before the event, there was no police presence at the gates,
Hmm.
but there were police inside standing. So
Yeah.
I was pleased when I got in there to know that at least we have early police presence. So if anybody, drinking alcohol or anybody intend to misbehave or miscarry themselves, and at least the physical presence of the police, the visible presence of the police
Mhm.
that in itself exercises a level of control. But apart from that, what I was thinking is simply just look how easily I walk in this square,
Mhm.
walk into the center of the event early. Nobody in search me for piece of iron in my waist. Nobody in search me for some illegal weapon. Nobody in pat me down to see if I holding anything at all that
Yeah.
infringes the provisions of the law in any way.
Mhm.
Simply put, when you attend an event in New York and in the more developed countries, you passing through scanners. they making sure you have no metal on you, and if it is you have a metal, you have to explain for what purpose. I walk in an event with a tripod, and the man asked me in New York, where am I going with a tripod? I told him, well, I normally take pictures. I'm a tourist.
Yeah.
And rather than bother members of the public, if they could hold my camera and take a picture of me, I just take my pictures myself.
Yeah.
So he said, but the size of this tripod, I don't think we can allow you to enter the event. I said, so it look like I'm going to boss somebody here? He says, sir, this is a public event. I don't make the rules. The size of this tripod, I take the explanation, but you can't enter there with that. So I had to go and put my tripod in a safe place and enter with my hands swinging.
Right.
But at least I understand where he's coming from, because if I was under alcohol and I was a different kind of person and somebody tell me something I ain't like, I might want to refuse to the tripod for other reasons. So the police in New York they assume the position that they have to assess a risk and take precautions before something happens.
Yeah. Well, I think Trinidad Carnival pose a unique difference in that. I mean, I'm not saying that even things like that cannot happen, but I think Trinidad Carnival is so intoxicating. It's so appealing, and it's so nice to everybody. I don't think the police will expect that to happen, but I understand what you're saying, and maybe if that is to be put in force, that should be enforced. The police will have a lot of work to do.
But it's a must. The same way we have scanners. We have scanners at the port, right? I'm reading I reading in the newspaper that 23,000 barrels come in for the year 2023 so far, and they've searched 4,000 barrels. Right? So in other words, there are scanners at the port, and they can't search each and every barrel, because if they were to do that, the time and the manpower required to search 23,000 barrels, nothing will pass through the port, and no progress will things wouldn't progress.
There'll be a mega backup. There'll be a real backup of stuff.
Right. Me with my first self was talking to a customs officer. I say, but 4,000 barrels being searched of 23,000. I find that's a small amount to search.
Yeah.
Right. Imagine 19,000 barrels coming through, and we taking it for granted that everything is everything, and it had nothing there that could be illegal or otherwise. But I was told that searching 4,000 barrels is above the international norm, meaning that there are standards set where you have to search, and you may not everything you're searching. So we searching 4,000 or 23,000. We are above the average, meaning that we are on par with the standards set internationally and globally.
Right.
But what I'm saying is this, right? When we having an event, when we have a pan event, security is important. In the same way that Beverly Ramsey Moore and Charleston Thomas and they have concerns that we have a festival in Tobago, that there are certain basic things that must be put in place in terms of the area must be, if not cordoned off. Traffic management is important for the maintenance of law and order and for protecting lives and property.
Yeah.
In the same manner that all over the world, and my New York example is security checks you on your way in to ensure that the people and the patrons inside there don't have the wherewithal, if it reaches to the use of force, to cause damage beyond a certain amount, meaning that you don't give a man a competitive edge on our next man in terms of he holding a weapon and the next one not. Everybody getting searched, and you're monitoring and regulating what's happening there. My example is, I find, and this is just my personal view, so notice I say is me. My position is, when you have an event such as took place in Woodford Square on International Pan Day, that what ought to have taken place is everybody gets searched, at least scanned on the way in, to ensure that no cutlass and knife going in. Yes, we have a unique culture where we don't resort to that. We don't have that kind of thing. But all it takes is one idiot that spoil it for everybody. So I empathize with Ms. Ramsey Moore. I understand how they may feel. If I may allude to what is being said here again, David. It's strong statements, which leads me to wonder sometimes. I want to quote here, because I don't want to be said that I have an agenda in the comment that I'm making. It's stated here in the same article, Newsday article, today's date, sorry, yesterday is day Tuesday, the 31st of October. It says here that we had a meeting on Wednesday. Davlin Thomas said he would get back to me by Friday, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it says that never happened. So goes on to say that he said when he phoned Thomas on Friday, he learned Peters was in Colombia, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they would have a board meeting when he returned the next week to decide on road management plan. So the gentleman goes on to say, if Vincent Gypsy Peters is in Colombia and he's having a conversation with Davlin Thomas, who's the deputy chair, the deputy chair is saying that they have to have a board meeting to discuss how they're going to deal with the road management on the day. He makes a comment on that. He says, I didn't realize that they needed to have a board meeting to make a determination. Because when Peter said to us earlier that they will help, meaning the NCC, he did not say it was going to be on the basis of a board meeting. In other words, if I give a commitment that the NCC is going to assist in the Tobago Carnival, he doesn't see, right, which is Charleston Thomas. He doesn't see what a board meeting, why a board must meet to determine whether they will help or not help, or in what fashion they're going to help. So it seemed like, when I read these things, it bothers me, because I will go a step further to say, you see, the listening public and the men on the street, when you talk to Tobagonians on the ground, you know what they're going to tell you, that we voted in a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And because we vote in a particular way, it appears that we're getting treated in a particular way because we stain we finger in a particular way, and that doesn't taste well. That doesn't feel right. I mean, it may not be true, right? And nobody will say, well, it's because of that. But the perception on the ground is always that, you get victimized when it is you go against the establishment. Let us hope that you see, these things could be avoided. Had they done what they're supposed to do, had the proper road management been put in place, these little hiccups not taking place, people wouldn't speculate. They can't speculate when things go perfect or seamless with no problems. But
I quite agree.
Yeah. All in all, I was really happy to see that there was another chapter in Tobago's festival, that we didn't have any fatalities. From my understanding, there were 12 steel band performing from Tobago itself, as well as a few guest orchestras from right here in Trinidad. I understand Trinidad All Stars was there. So it's good to see that despite what we're seeing playing off in terms of at a management level, that the steel band industry, and I use the word industry, the steel band industry in terms of the players and the steel orchestras in Trinidad and Tobago seem to have a relationship, and a functional relationship. So it seems like the steel band movement is an example to the politician and an example to the people with regard to how to relate to each other. The all in all, we need to look at the national climate. I think I was away from home for a little while, small time in my eye. But when I come back here now, I'm reading that we have one article in the newspaper talked about we seem to have an anger management problem in Trinidad. Of the 470 plus murders that took place, the homicide units and the bureau, they released information. They say that 90% of the crimes that take place in this country as a result of revenge, motivated by revenge, 4% by domestic violence, and 6% of it is caused by way of altercation, meaning some confusion between two warring parties. That in itself disturbs me. I mean, so it seems that we keep coming back to this whole issue of revenge in Trinidad. When we look at 474 plus murders thus far for the year, my concern is when we look at the numbers, we have 2 months to go, November and December. I can't say things just slow down because traditionally in November and December things just pick up in terms, and when I say things, I'm referring to the levels of criminality coming to the end of the year. So I really wouldn't like us to get to that 600 number, and I'm praying that we don't touch those kind of digits again.
Well, we are very close to it, you know. I mean, seems like we're closing in on 500 very quickly. You know, we still have all of November and all of December. And the rate it's been going, I mean, just the other day, I had about 7 to 8 in one day. So, so I am praying that the Almighty put a hand coming to the play and see if we can get this thing to be controlled, because like it's out of hand. You know, it has a lot of people not wanting to go out, and especially in this festive season. Now it's Christmas to Carnival, and that,
Exactly,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
You know, in Trinidad, we all about the seasons.
hmm hmm
I was reading where the National Parang Association of Trinidad and Tobago,
yeah,
Ms. Jagasa, the president, she came out and she was making comments that we need about $1.5 million pumped into the festival season, meaning the Parang festival season,
yeah,
in order to have a successful season.
hmm
And she was calling upon the corporate Trinidad and Tobago to assist. You know, when I read these things and given my love for culture, we're in November.
mm,
Um, the Parang Association is stating its position in the month of November for that they need money to survive the season. A season that has already been launched and begun already.
mm,
So why look for the money when the festival start, when the season commence? This dialogue should have been had in January, or it should have been had in sometime before. You know, I was trying to carry a dialogue with her, but we'll do that closer in the month of December to
yeah,
find out, you know, where things stand, because not only are they saying that there's a shortage of money, meaning they need 1.5 million to get the season up and running and functional and to have a successful season. Um, the Parang Association is saying that although they have a headquarters in Holly Street in Arima, um, they're in dire need of a home for Parang. Um, you know, if it is the Panchinbego is still to develop a home of its own.
mm,
I mean, they've had land assigned to them, and I guess they have to raise the money now in order to build a structure. The next step would be um, the Parang Association in Trinidad and Tobago. They would have to acquire land now. I don't know. Well, it seems that they're lacing with the powers that be to get some sort of assistance, and then money has to be raised now in order to build a center. You know, it's sad when we read these things because so much um, talent and so much um, bands and investment takes place in culture, and yet still, season into season, we see neglect. Um, but on a positive note, Highlander Steel Orchestra in Success Village in Lebanon, they recently um, announced that they finally got a home in terms of, you know, a yard that they could call their own. So perhaps we might expect to hear more from Highlanders, because they've been operating almost like a nomad from place to place for some time. And now that they've gotten a premise or a place of their own, they say now the band could practice, and they have a home that they could practice from. When I read that, I could relate to the Parang Association of Trinidad and Tobago having a similar concern, because when you see benefits being extended, everybody deserves some sort of you know, equal treatment. I'm not saying in any way that there's discrimination. I'm just saying that we understand the need to have a headquarters.
Well, you see, let me tell you something. I'm very deep into the, what should I say, the musical aspect of the culture of Trinidad and Tobago, and I've been always advocating that we should have a music industry first of all, and of course, it's difficult to understand why the people in authority um, seem to turn a blind eye, or they're not interested, or they don't ever make the issue of promoting and taking what I call we music and we culture to another level that will bring about revenue to stabilize and to sustain most of these different arms of the musical aspect of the culture. I mean, when you think about Trinidad and Tobago, people normally say we have a carnival mentality, and I could be proven by going back to a lot of programs that I did years ago, that I keep saying that we can sell that. We can sell our carnival mentality, meaning that it is so diverse and it's so unique and rich in each department or each sphere of the musical aspect of the culture, that investing in it from a governmental point of view would have been generating loads and loads of income. I even went as far to say um, we'll run out of oil, and that was years ago, afraid. And we cannot run out of culture because it's ingrained in our DNA. I mean, children will will will, will born and they grow up and they are just talented in these different aspects. I mean, and across the board, I'm talking about parang, calypso, um, um, chutney music, soca, steel band, drumming, limbo. We could go on and on. That list is very long. And if they had put some sort of effort into developing and giving these components of the arts this designated spaces, we would have it might have been impacting on the kind of criminal activity we see now, because the youth would have been busy knowing that they can get involved in different aspects of the culture. I mean, when you think about pan, I mean, not only the pan players, you can talk about when they talk pan. You have to talk about the people who make the pan sticks, who put the rubber on it, who making the cases for these pans, who building the racks. It's an industry by itself, like you said, and
Yeah,
the same goes for all the different aspects. Now, the only one I know that took off on its own and is doing well on its own is Chutney Soka. Those people don't depend on NCC. They have their own thing going on with their sponsors and all that goes with it or all that go with it to to take it to another level. And they have done that. By all means, they have done that. But on the other fronts, I find we've been celebrating Carnival for 100 and something years, and we can't. It seems like we just can't put things in the right place to showcase it on the world stage, if I should say that. And I am sure that a lot of the youths who are getting into all kind of different negative problems can surely be part and parcel of one of these different sections of the musical aspect of the culture, which will in turn flow into the social aspect of Trinidad and Tobago. I mean, but it seems, I mean, Parang people. I remember doing Parang festivals across the country first. It used to be a big deal. It was successful at every event. Lopino, San Rafael, uh, Maracas St. Joseph, Paramin, Separia. The list can go on. And at the headquarters in Arima,
yeah,
I was there on most of those occasions until the Parang Festival crashed. For some reason, it just crashed. Nobody tried to put it back into the sort of a way of producing it anymore. It was just thrown to the side. It's the same thing that goes for look how long Pancho Baker is waiting on a headquarters. I mean, this is the land of steel band and calypso and steel band, whichever you want to put first. I think calypso comes first, so let's say the land of calypso and steel band. Yet still, we have Tuco in a place where they are renting. We have Pantry being in a place where they are renting. Well, NCC is the umbrella body, but it does seems as though efforts are being made to make it a big thing. We have Napa, we have Sapa. You know, I always say that Napa should have been used as the headquarters of our musical industry. That all is so just like in America, and when we were chatting with Phil Simmons, he said something that I really absorbed. He said that it takes the private sector, the corporate people to to make that happen then. Because when you look at what's going on in America, where the music is big, you know, it has a lot of people who control what we call labels like Motown and Sony and Columbia and all these labels that controlled a lot of the new artists, a lot of the popular artists, a lot of the big stars under their label, and they had an institution or some sort of facilitation for that to blow up and make American music as it is now. The same thing is going on in Jamaica. We have a music that is rooted in all music. You see that calypso beat? I mean, if you talk to people like Pelham and thing, they would understand that language that I'm speaking. It's part of nearly every music. Why can't the people who know and people who has the wherewithal come forward and say, listen, look what happens for Carnival. Look what happened in the Tobago. Tobago can have their own carnival and it's successful to a certain point. Beside these kind of mudslinging and craziness, I don't know what are the causes for those kind of mudslinging and butting of heads and thing. But it's about time we get together and make it possible for young people to gravitate to these kind of social entities that will take them away from the negative things that they're getting involved with. Because a lot of them have nothing to do that why they're getting involved with all. And most of them are highly talented. When you look at Panama, I mean, you jump in the panting too. And I like how you jump in the panting because I find you deep in it now. Yeah, you learn well and you learn quick. When you look at the bands now, most of the bands have the senior band or the main band, and they have a junior band. And most of the juniors, they gravitate to the senior part of the band, the band that will. And when you look at Panorama, you see a lot of the bands where about 50 to 60% are young people. But when you look into the crowd, like in the grandstand and in the north stand, you would not see that amount of young people. You'll see them outside, all on the greens, or in the paddock area, along the drag and thing, because they just want to have a time. But what I'm saying is that something lately. I've been to phase two, and I've seen what's happening there. You see mostly elderly and senior people coming out to these events, but the players are mostly young people, and some of them are now gravitating to these kind of events. So it shows that if some effort and emphasis are placed on the promotional aspect, as this is Trinidad and Tobago, this is what we have to offer to the world. I mean, a lot could be achieved in a free. A lot could be achieved. So when I hear anybody head bouncing and this, a lot of things happen from Carnival and that I wouldn't speak on air about, that hurts a lot of people. And those are people who are part and parcel of it. And those are the people who really make it happen. That is a conversation that I would not start on air at all, at all, at all, at all. And those are the downfalls of these same institutions that represent that aspect of the culture. The moment is a calypso and pan and carnival, we have entities to control within the differences. We have Pan Trinbago for Pan, we have Tuco for Calypso. NCC is the umbrella body. Yet still, after so long, what kind of crazy things happen? Things that I wouldn't speak on air about. I don't think that I can be less of a gentleman with that is considered. It's in my DNA to be like that. But a lot of things that bother me too. And I always ask myself, why can't we get it right? Why? You
But
see places like, I mean, you travel a lot. You see places like Miami Carnival is a big thing. you know, uh, Carnival in New York, Labor Day is a big thing. That it's promoted across the globe. Everybody knows exactly when these events are coming up and what to expect. This year we said we were celebrating the mother of all carnivals, Well, I don't know who gave it that theme. It didn't work out as that at all. That a lot of ups and downs and all kind of crazy things happen. And as the Mecca, we should have this thing so well put together to present to the world that it should be bringing in more money than oil and gas and all of that.
But credit to these steel bands. And when I speak with some of the arrangers and some of the executive members of the various steel orchestras that we have across the country, I ask them how do they manage the band and manage the resources of the band in order to keep the band as a viable entity. Some of them I go so far to say, well, with the sponsorship you have, whether the sponsorship or the sponsor, how involved are they? Um, so I'm being told that in no way, if it is you consider the costing to maintain a steel orchestra, that the money that you make from prize money, right, or appearance money, because not everybody can win.
That's
So,
right.
so the money you get for appearances, in no way when you total or you aggregate the appearance money, that money combined with the sponsorship money. Because sometimes people hear sponsorship and believe well it's money. Yes, sometimes the
Yeah.
thing with sponsorship it's not all about money. Sponsorship is about putting your brand behind a band and then
Mhm.
ensuring that the band has what it needs in order to present itself to the season, which could
Yeah.
mean that it would mean that you had to ensure that the pants are looking like old rusty pants you have put down in 5 years. So
Exactly.
I would imagine the pants have to be in some way uh, tuned and painted, and the presentation of the band in terms of the racks and the floats and so on, and the,
Banners
the,
and all of
the
that.
aesthetics of how the orchestra is presented to the public, that in itself is seen about too.
Hmm.
In terms of the night practices, remember the players there, the players performing and practicing for a 2 hour period.
Hmm.
Um, that's 2 hours of performances that will be there after and before that will reach early.
Yeah.
So I often I see renegades on a practice night. Ribhouse pulls up in a station wagon and boxes a food coming out. I am very happy for Renegades, but I'm thinking I wonder what provisions are being made for other steel orchestras. Renegades is a big band,
Yeah.
so big band does get big treatment.
Hmm. Hmm.
What about a lesser band? And I don't want to say lesser in
Well,
any
well,
way.
that what you're speaking about. I mean, I traverse from north to south
Mhm.
daily, and I can tell you, it's not now that Carnival. Most of the bands that come out for Carnival, I think they're just coming out to get the appearance fee that could whatever it can do, maybe to share among the players for the Carnival season. But outside of that, if you could tour Trinidad and Tobago, drive around Trinidad and Tobago after Carnival, only the big bands, like we call them the big eight, will be functional. The rest of them, you see the pans hang up until next Carnival. You
Mhm.
know, one little band that I know is trying very hard, and they're not a sponsored band, is the San City Steel Symphony. They operate on Carib Street in San Fernando. Their panyard is part of the city corporation's yard. It isn't a real panyard. So if some effort is put into housing these steel bands at um at a location where they can say, well, this is our home, and the steel bands too, just like Renegades and All Stars and Phase Two, will have to have regular events so that they can help themselves. I'm not saying people should just give them, because it can work. I mean, you've been to Phase Two, you've been to Skiffle. Those are well designed paniers and things, and you have seen the reaction from people, the participation and the patronage and thing. You have seen that, so it can happen. But most of these bands are in areas where people might say is noise and disturbing the rest and all kind of things. So if these bands can get a permanent home where it's okay to play and to practice and to develop business and probably music schools and all of that, a lot can be achieved. But where the big eight is concerned, there was a celebration on the Eastern Main Road at one time at the Angostura Yard there, where the name of the program was the Big Eight.
Yeah.
I never missed that, and then that just faded away. Then they had the street parade or the street festival, steel band festival, which was exempted because of the celebration of this United Nations Declaration of Steel Band Day, and there's a street parade that attracted thousands and thousands of people, and they locked down that part of the Eastern Main Road to accommodate that.
Right.
So that there are lots of things that are within the simple-minded person that can happen that we see creating problems at the top. They just can't get it right, and they just can't put this thing in place and that thing in place. I think because where sponsorship is concerned, I mean, it's not easy. A sponsor will jump out behind a band, but it's not easy for the band, the executive of the band, to make demands on the sponsor. They have to come up with proposals and get the sponsor to come on board where that is concerned. There are certain things that the sponsor will assist with. They'll know, well, okay, we will do this. We support and we will assist and everything with this and that and the other. And that's it. Outside of that, you have to have a genuine proposal that will be of interest to the sponsor, where they will be happy to come and be part of. It has to be something. I mean, the sponsor name, is in the mix of all of that. The more promotion they get, if you have good promotional events, and they will be happy. They had to have their brand being bandied about, and more people know about it, is the more the sponsor will make their own money on that side of the thing. But even for Panorama, I see for Panorama in the Savannah on Panorama Day, group tickets will be sold to different companies and businesses and corporate people and things. And they use that. They will come, like, let's say 20 of up and down company, right? They're just saying, using that word. The up and down company will buy 20 tickets or 50 tickets to come to the Panorama. Now, in my head, they come to listen and enjoy the pan or have a good time, whether they're listening to the pan or not. But they will come with banners and promotional paraphernalia of the company and put it up where they lime in. That is a promotion that they are getting for free.
Right.
You understand? So all those things have to be looked. When you look at the greens and things, you will see a lot of this posse. Sometimes you see drones in the air advertising things. I mean, all of that should be looked into, because I always ask myself, is Pan Trinbago to football, to Pan as FIFA is to football?
Mm-hmm.
Is Pan Trinbago to Pan as FIFA is to football? You can't just throw a big football event at FIFA. I don't know,
Yeah.
You understand? So I think from that perspective, some sort of legislation has to go into place so that Pan Trinbago will really be the governing body of Steel Band. I think that can generate a lot of income also. And I am sure that Mrs. Moore and they are probably working on that.
But we would hope. The thing is, like I was saying earlier, the steel band's ability to regulate itself is phenomenal. Some of these bands stay viable because of self-effort.
That's right.
Because they have lovers of the orchestra and people who identify with the brand in a very real and meaningful way. In other words, people territorial. And territoriality is a good thing. It's good when a South man could identify as a South man as opposed to a man from the North. It's not that we're talking segregation or separatism.
No. It's two different things. Yeah. I see it because,
there's a pride about that. There's a pride about
the kind of events I come to in Port of Spain. There's hardly a little or none at all in South. And I mean, when we were celebrating Pan Month, where I met you there at Skiffle, that was because it was Pan Month. You understand? That was a sort of Panchon Big kind of South uh, division or the South Central division of presenting something for Pan Month. But I've never been to like to say Funkless giving this thing and they invite renegades and it's probably a one-off kind of thing. But the way it's being done in the north, phase two will have this and they'll have Desperados, Skiffle, whoever. Renegades will have one and they have this and that on a kind of regular basis as though they rotate in the events. And that augurs well for these bands. Now I think South bands should do the same. I don't hear about the East do that either. So I think what you're saying there is very pertinent towards the development of these bands on their own, so that it will be a less strain on Pantry Bigger, because to move a band, to transport a band, the big band for Panama, that's a lot of money. To outfit 150 players plus, because not only the 150 players, you will have to outfit 40 for the staging of Panorama and all of that. So it's very costly and cumbersome with steel bands, but something must be put in place so that most of the effort will be the energy behind the effort will be less, because it takes a lot to run a steel band, to keep it in order. Desperados and they're boasting about 50 years plus, I think.
Yeah.
So to keep it together, in the north is a different reaction from the people, I find, than in south. And south at one time produced a lot of top bands, and I don't know what happened along the way, but now you'll only hear about Funplay, you'll hear about Skiffle. Hatters is now kind of coming back on the scene. I see they're putting up a new patent for Hatters. We now have elder panelers, but the Antillian All Stars and the Hillside Symphony, a lot of them Antillian is trying to get back on the scene now. But just like in the Southeast Port of Spain area, where we have all these bands, it's the same thing in San Fernando Central. We had a lot of bands there too, and I don't know, you're just saying about the Funplay, way back.
We need to examine the relationship some of these bands may have with each other. When I talk with the North bands, for instance, when I chat with Phase 2 Pan Groove, and when I chat with Renegades people and so on, what I recognize is a lot of the events that are organized. Let us say, Phase 2 recently had something, right?
Mm-hmm.
They invited Exodus, they invited Skiffle.
Mm-hmm.
From what I understand, a lot of these bands support each other in the North. If I may go so far, sometimes I ask them, I say, so how do you all afford to host a band or to invite bands and host 2 and 3 bands? Because the money it would take to get a steel orchestra to perform for 45 minutes to an hour, that's just performance money. Then that transportation money to bring across the instruments, because you can't bring the instruments, you can't walk it down the street like a cow.
That's right.
That it has to be transported in a particular way.
Mm-hmm.
And all these things come at a cost.
Mm-hmm.
But from my understanding and from what I was told, these steel bands support each other, meaning they bear their own cost sometimes, and they come across and assist another steel band in terms of they come and perform for free in one event, and then I guess the favor is extended on the other end, where you would come across after you host them, they host you.
Yes.
We need to examine whether in South Trinidad, what is the relationship, because relationships are based on personalities.
Of course.
I would imagine that when I'm just calling names, let us say Bugsy picks up the phone and he calls Desperados people, and All Stars call Bugsy and so on. Maybe there's a relationship there that we need to explore, that is the kind of love and camaraderie that they share and respect. So they get that sort of symbiosis, and therefore the product that the public is seeing, people may not understand the chemistry that is working behind the scenes in order to get this sort of thing going. Exactly. We perhaps need to examine San Fernando and environs, or examine South, and see whether that sort of relationship or that sort of fellowship exists among the arrangers and the orchestras. Because if you have, I'm not saying that it doesn't, I'm just saying that part of what makes for a good product is for good people to relate to each other and in the spirit of community.
Of
I
course.
accept that try to attend as many events as possible, and I scarcely hear something happening in South, barring that event that Skiffle had
Yeah,
a
yeah.
few months ago.
And that
I
was
am not
in
aware there was
the
anything in
celebration
South.
of Pan,
Yeah.
the Pan Month celebration. That was a thing put on merely or mostly by the efforts of Pan Trinbago. That was the South Central Division presentation of something for the Pan Month. You
With
know?
the assistance of Pantrindigo, because
Yes,
Pantrindigo got involved.
yes, yes,
So
yes, yes.
one would I would hope that that South didn't have something only because Pantrindigo got involved.
Yeah. Now I've been to, well, what was happening from a youth level. I've been to a lot of events where lately the last one I've been to was at the Tornadoes Panyard, where they had San City and other bands, and some bands didn't show up, but it was at the youth level, you know, and so too was San City. They went somewhere else again. For now, I have two grandsons who play with San City, so that's why I talk a lot about it, because I am supportive of the band, and I try to follow how things happen, but it's not on the same level or on par with what is happening in Port of Spain, But at a youth level, there have been a few events, and not much, but a few events, and I would like to see them expand on that, and be at the same juncture like the North bands, because like you said, it's a fellowship. It's a I help you, you help me, and they get along with that, because most of these pan shows in Port of Spain are successful. When you
But
go to the Panyard, you see a lot of people. You
but
know,
but you can't walk inside the Panyard. I've been to the
tell
events,
you,
and you
yeah,
can't walk freely. The
no,
amount of people that come out, and of course it's
yeah,
a mature crowd, but
mm-hmm.
the players are
Yeah,
young players,
that's right, that's
right?
right,
When
that's
I chat with Renegades, during the carnival season, you see the allotment of players. When you go to and see the stage band perform, the stage
yeah,
side performances is only youths.
yeah, yeah,
Only youths, which is could only be a good thing. When I ask, how come it's only youths stateside, they say, well, during the carnival season, there's a certain amount of players that come out and they make themselves available, but they give the young people, the young membership in the band, opportunity to perform stateside during the year. So when you look at it, um, I would imagine that if you're playing stateside and you're in the north, you probably getting more opportunity as a stateside player through the course of the year than the chance of being able to perform with the band for Panorama, because Panorama is just for what, 5 weeks? I build
yeah,
up into 5 weeks and then
yeah,
the big show on the Saturday.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So if you play in stateside, you getting a good practice or a good opportunity to develop as a player in events that really is not on a competitive level, but it's more playing. So you're freer. I
Yeah,
often say that I find Renegades players, stateside banders look like they're enjoying themselves more in terms of the expression on the face and all that
yeah, they like it.
than the panorama. So
Yeah,
I was told, well, they don't have the burden of competition on the shoulder, and they
right.
get opportunity to play a range of music and different
Yeah,
kind of music.
yeah, yeah.
So less pressure and more self-expression.
Another thing that is working for the younger people, what they're attracted to, is that most of these shows are being put up on YouTube and things. So so that adds to them gravitating to these Spaniards now and going to do these events, because they know somebody's filming it, recording this stuff, and by later it's up on YouTube. They can see themselves. So I think all of that adds to the production of the musical instrument, or the promotion of the musical instrument, and give it a sort of a catapult into another level. And it augurs well for steel band. I think the same should be going on for calypso. I'm very concerned about calypso. I'm a real, I'm really into the happenings of calypso, and it's Calypso History Month, and there's not much noise about it. There are
Mhm.
events started to come off. There's Kaiserama. There's Hamidullah has a concert at the Kaiser Blue Cafe on the 11th. and there's Icon's Legacy at the Hyatt on the 12th. But to me,
Right.
it's low key. You're not getting the oomph that you should get from it. Soca is now being released, and the soca artists, they go social media and they get their music out there. But what I'm saying, somehow a facilitation is not happening on a national level to 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 generate that kind of revenue that could be generated from these events like Pan and Calypso and Carnival. We have a Carnival museum. No, it was a real it came out with a bang. Mr. Atai is a very good friend of mine. I have to visit him. I've been promising to visit him for a long time since the opening. But they treat it like a novelty. It's happening now, so it's a big noise about it, and then everything goes quiet. That in itself should be well promoted. That should be all over the place in people's eyes and ears, and it will also have young people gravitating to it also. So I'm in a kind of bubble in understanding that those who are in authority, or like Phil Simmons said, the corporate people, when you look at Carnival, no, Carnival has been taken away from the small man and is now being handled by the big corporate people. I'm not afraid to say that. You see it. You see it's gone from downtown to uptown. The routes have changed to suit what's happening uptown. So
We go into all inclusive fets. Everybody go on all inclusive
you understand what I'm saying? And that
because the
has
money is in all inclusive. And in all inclusive, you control the bar, you control the concession stands, you control the gates,
yeah.
and you're controlling the environment, meaning that you have a say over who inside and who outside. You even have a say in who you're selling the tickets to. Although the tickets are being sold in the public space.
Yeah.
I have been told when it comes to buying tickets for a particular school fete, if we may, without calling the name of the school,
Yeah.
you have to buy that ticket through somebody who.
Oh.
In other words, they're screening where these tickets going. They don't want to see somebody turn up there who could change the color of the event, and I don't mean color in its physical sense. I mean simply meaning.
I know.
I guess sometimes that could be a good thing. I often I remember Desperados were advertising they have a free show when they were on Tragedy Road.
Yeah.
So I asked one of the management committee members. I said, listen, why are they not charging for the event? Desperados is a big band. Unless it is you're doing something community oriented, you ought to charge, because I'm certain that there's overhead involved.
Yeah.
And people should be willing to pay something, whether it be something nominal. At least it will help offset the cost.
Yeah.
But part of my logic and all, and I was very open when I told them that sometimes you eliminate I don't want to say the grassroots element, because grassroots is not a bad thing. But you eliminate, when you have an event, you tend to set a standard where you expect people who willing to dip in the pocket to pay 5 cents. They assign a value to spending the 5 cents. So therefore, the people who attend an event now are people who have a genuine interest in what's happening. It's not some people who just walk in because something free happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is when mischief does take place.
Exactly. But all in all, I think more emphasis should be placed on the marketing and promotional aspects of what I call we music and we culture. A lot of support is needed to take it to that level, because I mean, like we know that the big bands, the big eight, they do things, watching each other's back to generate some money. And I know, even though these events are successful, I know it has to be on a regular basis for them to generate the kind of revenue to really upkeep a steel band. A steel band is so easy to upkeep, And I would like to see it across the board. I would like to see some of the bands that play well, but they don't have the funds to manage themselves all through the year, so they have their pants till Carnival come again. I think that should be, and I think more expose on the weekends and public holidays should be afforded, or facilitation should be afforded for these big bands. I talk a lot about the pitch league, and given the opportunity, I too will make that facility, the Pitch Lake facility, an area where culture will be exposed in a big way. I don't want to say much on that either. On that note, there's a good friend of mine, Iwat Raj Paul, who is sending comments. Now we are accepting comments on this new system, Farid. So he's saying, good afternoon, gentlemen. Library Association for Innovation is planning a library day with a week of activities, and Steel Band would be one of the big players of the event. So I look forward to that. I am going. Well, I just heard about it, so I'm going to check my brother when I get home and have a little chat with him. And I told him straight up, I want to be part of this, in promoting this and to be part of it. I don't mind jumping on the board or whatever. I'm a real library man to my heart, so I'm into that. Your mic is muted.
For the listening public, if it is you have an event, particularly local culture and steel band music, once you share with us the details, we'll be happy to, in any way promote or at least highlight what is happening, bring to the public's attention. But I was reading something else, David. Just like everything local, the Little Carib Theatre is having a presentation, a program, if we may use the word show, on the 4th of November, which is Saturday, starting at 6 p.m. It's scheduled to end at 9 p.m. They've been drawing attention to the founder of the Little Carib Theatre, Beryl McBurney. Tomorrow would be her birthday. If she was alive, she would have been in the 100 range.
Right.
She passed on, I believe it was the year 2000. But like everything else, they've been having these events trying to reignite the spirit of Beryl McBurney and what she stood for in terms of Little Carib Theatre. And also bring the young people into greater awareness as to her contribution. I remember mentioning that and seeing that we're talking about the steel band. Invaders had a very special relationship with the Little Carib Theatre.
Yeah.
Although, in as much as I mention it, I'm not knocking Invaders, but Invaders have been around for so many years. And when we interviewed the pan personalities, when we had interviewed Dr. Holman and Dr. Golub on previous programs that we had, they highlighted the parental support and the support that Invaders provided in terms of inspiring steel bands in West Port of Spain.
Yeah.
But Invaders never won a panorama. But its ability to fuel and engineer and to contribute as a conduit to the steel band movement, nobody could take that away from Invaders. That is something that is, as I sometimes say, carved in stone and engraved in silver. You may not have trophies that that reflect you win X amount of panorama titles, but their contribution for the next 200 plus years will always be spoken about, because every time we talk to someone, every time we interview an arranger, and you ask them where your inspiration come from, without even saying much, the word Invaders comes in. They mention that they started off here, they grew up hearing Invaders, they played with Invaders at some point in time, and before they branched into other areas. So perhaps what we should do, last year when we were interviewing the steel band arrangers for the carnival season, the build up into Panorama, we didn't get that opportunity to interview all of the bands. I've been doing some groundwork from as early as now to ensure that when we get things going soon, that we would not only give opportunities to the bands we weren't able to feature, but get an early start so the public can get a taste of what the arrangers have in mind for the new season. Bearing in mind we have a short season.
Yes, of course.
The panorama panorama season starts right after Carnival, and if my calendar is
as a matter of fact, single band competition starts on the 2nd of December.
Right.
All right. So we have on this weekend here at the Queen's Park Savannah, we have the NCC's launch of Carnival. And then on the 5th, we have Pantry and Bingo's launch of Carnival. People can go to ncctt.org/new, and they can also go to pantryandbingo.co.tt/events /events to find out the itinerary that has already been put in place from the launch of Carnival. But the launch of Carnival is set for this Saturday, 3 p.m. at the Queen's Park Savannah. Well, I'll try and be there, because I'm heart and soul into this. And Pancho and Bagels, the launch at a venue to be announced. I mean,
no, the launch at Pancho launch is at Exodus Spaniard on Sunday.
Exodus Spaniard.
Yeah, on Sunday the 6th. No, sorry, Sunday the 5th. Sunday the 5th of November, starting at 5:30 p.m. at the Exodus Spaniard in East Trinidad.
Right, good. So that is settled now. So I know the NCC's Carnival launches at the Queen's Park Savannah, and it's free. People like that part of the costing free. So
NCC is you're saying that is on Saturday.
Saturday at the Queen's Park Savannah.
So that starts at what time? At 3 p.m.
Yeah, 3 p.m. I look forward to seeing you there, man.
Well, I mean, I find all the times I could get early start. I'll be there.
Yes. I'm not too sure about heading to the east, but
well, the thing is that you were making a comment about South and events, not pan events, not really popular in South, and in the context of in the manner in which it transpires in the North. In the East, it's the same thing. We used to have the East had Cordettes in Sandy Brandy. Cordettes was a big band.
Yeah.
Cordettes is now a medium band. Mm-hmm. But Cordettes for many years fly the flag at the East. Mm-hmm. They used to be in every national panorama final.
Yeah.
With and like with everything else, steel bands go through their ebb and flows. Mm-hmm. And sponsorship is so important that sometimes the band fades out of existence.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I have your good friend Dr. Vanas James on the set. Yes.
Dr. James, we want to welcome you. Thanks for making yourself available to us. To the listening public, we have no other than Dr. Vanas James with us this afternoon. The ever reliable Dr. James. It's good to see you. It's good to see you.
I quite agree with him, Dr. James.
Yeah.
We're always happy to have you here.
So Dr. James, let's get straight into it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Let's get straight into it. I often refer to you as the voice of Tobago. We could rely on you to lend your voice and lend your very frank views, right?
Well, bring updated professional information. That may be the right thing.
Okay. I was browsing the newspapers, and we just had the completion of a 4-day festival in Tobago. You and I had a similar discussion a year ago when they had the inaugural event, what has popularly come to be known as the October Carnival. The relationship between the both islands has always been vibrant, but sometimes we see some things being played out in the public space that, in my view, sometimes could be unnecessary. And allow me to contextualize what I'm saying. I was looking at a newspaper article, and they were highlighting some of the things that have been happening in the carnival. The THA, and I'm looking at Tuesday, October 31st, in Newsday, page 9. So the listening public, I don't want them to say that I have an agenda and I'm creating news here. In an article written by Corey Connelly, there was an exchange that took place between Dr. Charleston Thomas, the technical advisor in the THA, Division of Tourism, Culture and Antiquities and Transportation, an exchange between himself and Winston Gypsy Peters. Peter seems to be insinuating that the Tobago Carnival, the product wasn't what it was supposed to be, or it wasn't what it could have been, because there was a lack of discourse between Tobago and the National Carnival Commission. Resonating quietly underneath that exchange between Charleston Thomas and Gypsy Peters is a comment that Beverly Ramsey Moore made, where she said that during the steel band performances in Tobago, vehicles were traversing through that area that the bands were performing, meaning that the streets weren't properly cordoned off and the police weren't assisting. what is your comment on this situation? Were you in Tobago in the past 4 days, in the 4 days of the event? Did you attend the events, Dr. James?
I didn't attend the events, but I was in Tobago and I've been up to speed on a lot of what's been happening, including anything that you might describe as confusion, lack of cooperation with Trinidad, and so on. Well, we shouldn't have that. I mean, if we're clear in Tobago about what we're trying to do, uh, we would know that a huge amount of collaboration with Trinidad is necessary for many reasons. One of which has to do with the transfer of skills. I mean, the Carnival is almost completely an invention of the Trinidad community, minus the contribution of Tobago Calypsonians. But the masquerade, the works of mass, really evolved fundamentally in Trinidad, and there's a lot of skill there that could still be borrowed or attracted investments and so on into anything you're trying to do in Tobago. So I would imagine a dialogue with the NCC, dialogue with the operators in Trinidad, and a well-structured dialogue at that uh, is in order if we want to make significant progress here. There are other things too, Fareed. If we'll talk about it later, but if you're going to do Carnival properly in Tobago, there will be things you have to do differently to the way you're doing Carnival in Trinidad. And that should be a part of the discussion as well, both for the interests of the Trinidad public and the Trinidad operators, and uh, because Tobago, as you know, is half the country, and for the interests of the Tobago economy and the effort to develop a viable economy here. So there's more to it than just putting on a fit, and we should talk a little bit about that as we go along. But I agree with the sentiment of Gypsy that a serious conversation should exist, and I also think that that's reflected in what Beverly is complaining about, which is that if you do not have well organized collaboration and you kind of operating on a war footing between Tobago and Trinidad, then you can't expect the police to come and work in a collaborative way with you, although they should without regard to where they're providing the service. But leadership matters in all things, and if I were the THA, I would ensure an adequate amount of cooperation is engineered between whatever we're trying to do in Tobago and and Trinidad.
In all fairness, Ms. Ramsey Moore was indicating that Voice had a show in Shore Park on the same evening, later in the evening. And the resources seem to have been concentrated on ensuring that the event in Shore Park comes off without any hiccups or without incident. And it doesn't seem like there was enough police presence to manage what was taking place in and around the steel band performances. That in itself might be an indictment on the Tobago um, police service, meaning whoever is responsible for allocating the resources of the police to manage what is the events that are taking place. That seems to be more like a Tobago issue.
Well, coordination matters there, doesn't it? I mean, if you're doing several events simultaneously, scale then comes into the picture, and you've got to have a serious uh, dialogue before the fact with the relevant contributors to the successful execution of these conduct of these events. And so, if you don't have that, then Beverly's point will kick in, which is that you will have voice in Shore Park and something else. I heard about that particular thing just in a meeting day before yesterday.
Mhm.
Uh, you can have these things sorted out if they're properly planned and the relevant authorities know the scale of effort that is needed. But when it's not properly planned, you're likely to get this kind of outcome that Beverly is complaining about. I would suspect, although I don't know for a fact, I would suspect that a lot of this goes into the kind of coordination that you have between the Tobago developers of the program and the relevant authorities, national authorities. Remember, policing and all of that is really a matter for the national cabinet. It's not a matter for the Tobago government. So
Mm-hmm.
you do have to have real dialogue uh, and a close collaboration to have things like these work in a serious, neat, and smooth way. So I hear you, but I think if I were involved in planning all of these things, I would provide substantive leadership to the government in Trinidad on what we're trying to do, the scale on which we're doing it, the kind of cooperation we need with Trinidad, not just demands. This is all about leadership. You have to encourage, in many ways, you have to encourage the central government to team up with you to build a viable process in Tobago. I remember just a couple of months ago, Fali and his team declared war on Port of Spain. So I don't know if the framework even existed in which you could have the collaboration you need to do this thing successfully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I would think that I mean, you raise a hornet's nest there, right? The beating that the central government and the PNM got in that election, one would hate to think that corrupted relationships or relations with the THN on such a level that there is soreness that lies between them, meaning a septic situation, so much so that the lines of communication have been disrupted on a level where the communication isn't what it's supposed to be. For the man on the street, the interpretation of things when it's not going good, or when they hear that they didn't get the support that they wanted, or there is a voice that says that the NCC didn't support the DHA, is that there's a political touch to it.
Well, you shouldn't, just if I may say this though, fundamentally, if you think this through properly, uh, this should be well past an election that took place 2 years ago. This situation we are in Tobago requires leadership from Tobago. And that leadership has to be clever leadership. It has to be informed leadership. And it has to be skilled enough to understand that if you're going to develop Tobago, first of all, you can't develop it for your party and your half of the country. You have to develop for everybody, including the PNM. In other words, the PNM in Tobago, they have a right to be here. They have a right to equal and adequate treatment and so on. So you can't use the outcome of an election to govern for your half and ignore everybody else. That's the first thing. That's normal, standard, common sense democracy. You don't need no rocket science to understand that. The other important point, though, Farid, is Tobago is half the country, but it is the poorer half. We produced in 2022 about 4,100 US dollars per person, compared to 16,005 that the Minister of Finance boasted about in his budget. Right? So that's 4 times poorer. Now, if you're in that position, the cleverness that is required is first and foremost your cleverness in Tobago. It is not the government in Trinidad that has to reach out to you. It's you who have to be skilled. And I don't mean condescending and being in some sort of subservient mode. I'm talking about leadership. I'm talking about skilled, informed, inclusive government. And if you proceed on that basis, you will put the election behind you and say, I'm governing for everybody. And I also have the country, so I'm governing for Trinidad too. And therefore, what I would do is make sure to convene appropriate, informed discussions with the government in Trinidad, PNM notwithstanding, about where the country is going, what is needed for the country to make progress, how Tobago fits into that, and what the central government has to help us do. And I don't think I'm no I don't speak for Rowley, but I do not think the kind of Rowley I understand would be close to that approach. I think if you approach any of the leaders of the central government in Trinidad, you could get a real meaningful conversation that is properly informed. It is when the conversation is ill-informed and goes on with a lot of heightened tension and the absence of the calmness and the leadership that you need, that you tend to get resistance. Tobago has to move beyond the Robinsonian agenda. The Trinidad don't like we and Tobago don't like we. That kind of thing is Tobagoans have to take the lead in shifting the conversation from that to the conversation about what the country needs. We here must understand the nation better than you in Trinidad. So we could say this is what development in Trinidad and Tobago needs. This is where we are in Tobago. This is the deficit we have. This is how we could contribute if we collectively team up to do the investment. If we don't proceed on that basis, it will be 1,000 years before Tobago develop. And more likely it's going to be 1,000 years before Trinidad diversifies its economy, because you can't really do the diversification down there unless you take full advantage of the possibilities that we have in the tourism product that could be industrialized and diversified in Tobago. You
Mhm.
can't export high quality tertiary education better in Trinidad than you could using the Tobago tourism product. You can't do the same for healthcare better. If you twin these industrialized efforts with the Tobago tourism potential, the country develops much faster than if you try to do them in Cuba and in so use the whole country but exploit the potential in Tobago to the fullest. And I would be able to explain that to the government technically with data and show how the country could benefit. Uh, Income in the country could triple in 20, 30 years if you take advantage of the potential we have here in Tobago, including doing the carnivals differently to the carnivals that you do in Port.
When we're talking economic growth and development, um, we can't exclude people from that. I mean, the there's a phenomenon now that with the all-inclusive feds, and I'm saying that in the context of the Shore Park event. When you have events in Shore Park and you have subscribers and you have business components, the people who sell the bacon shack, the people who sell the 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 food um, and the drink. When you have franchises and corporate bodies taking control of such things, the man on the street, the person who sells, the itinerant vendors, the simple person who might be a bacon shack person, who might be selling roast corn, selling boiled corn, selling different things. One wonders whether they have an opportunity to get an opportunity to sell or to offer their product in an event or on a scale such as uh, inside one of these venues. We've moved away from, to put it differently, we moved away from community events where everybody selling at the side of the road and everybody can get an opportunity to make a dollar. What is your view in terms of the growth and development now of all-inclusive feds with a view to what is happening in Tobago?
Well, I understand why it developed in the context of Trinidad. Uh, I paid a lot of attention to it when I was doing work for the NCC, and I understand a lot of it has to do with security and all of these other things, given the nature of the environment, of the social environment and the crime environment and so on in Trinidad. And I could imagine that if you are importing your FET organizer, so you bring voice, then you'll bring the technology they've developed. So I understand that as an economist would. Now, there are a couple of things that would matter if you were conceiving of how to proceed in Tobago. The first thing is, because we have fifth schedule responsibilities, we have room under the law to make policy And if you are inclusive in your policy making and you bring companies like Voice into the discussion, Trinidad companies generally, as you should if you're really running an inclusive THA, then in that discussion, you'll hear the voice of Tobagonians, you'll hear the voice of the Trinidad entrepreneurs and so on. And you have the room to make policy to achieve a decent compromise that would deal with the issue you're raising about creating openings for local vendors and what have you. So I would treat that as a low-hanging fruit if I were running the THA, because that's a straightforward uh, opportunity that for me to use the power of policy to get the right thing done, where the right thing is known only by dialogue with all the stakeholders. So it's not that the right thing is what you are saying. You may be right, but that's you. The the right thing in politics is what the collective says, what all the voices say, and what the representatives of the people distill from that. And our failure to set up the system to allow for that kind of dialogue in Tobago leads to flawed policy making time and time again in Tobago. And that's half of the point that you have to understand. But what's at stake here in the Tobago Carnival and the National Carnival development is not simply providing room for local vendors selling low-end products and so on. That's important. But the bigger fish that you have to be going after if you're developing Carnival in Tobago goes to the issue of what you're going to be doing in the development of the Carnival to build capacity in the Tobago, among the Tobago entrepreneurs, to create linkages to the rest of the creative industries, advertising and marketing, craft and production of fashions and so on, product design, TV, radio, I mean, film production and photography and video games and publishing and music, and all those things offer real opportunities for the advancement of Carnival in Tobago through the development of linkages with the rest of our creative industries. That's important for you in Trinidad as well, because the linkages in Trinidad have virtually disappeared since you ended local mass production, for example, and since the development of the calypsos, the mass camps, the steel bands, and so on, sort of became somewhat tempered. Uh, so there is more to the conversation that Tobago needs to set up to think through how opportunities could be expanded inside the Tobago economy, even as we are bringing imports from the rest of the world to put on the Carnival, and even if we are bringing entrepreneurs from Port of Spain to drive interventions and activities in the medium term. In the long term, you're going to get high income from Carnival only if you build the linkages of the kind that I was telling you there about in a little while. That I spend my life in WIPO explaining this to countries. Any segment of the creative industries you want to develop, when you're talking about them, you need to think of the linkages with the rest of the creative industries. That's true for Carnival. It's true for what we do here as Heritage. It's true for uh, fashion and art and any other part. You have to be conscious about how you're going to build links, especially to video and films and video games and these things that create long-term extended income. So the short-term income for a person who could cook some fry bake is one thing, but the real prize is the longer-term intellectual property incomes and so on that you're talking about because of the linkages you're building to these other parts. And if you have to consciously do that, you have to sit down with the types not Minshall himself, but the types like Minshall, and talk about choreographing mass in a place like Tobago. What does that mean in terms of fashion and the creation of new trends in fashion and all that sort of stuff? It's a big story, and we have not explored it in Trinidad. And if the THA is wise, it would head down that road, because that's where the money is. And for a place like Tobago, that's where development will come from.
Have you all have, and when I say you all have Tobago, the stakeholders sat and have conversations like this where they discuss how they can capitalize on this phenomenon, meaning just what we say. You
I
have
don't
steel
think so.
bands, but why haven't you taken
I don't
this?
think, just to say it, I don't think that the conversation has ever been held. And my signal that it hasn't been held is the absence of a proper report from the last year's carnival, on the impact. Remember, what you're dealing with here, Farid, is an island that imports 90% of everything it uses. We import everything. So that means the carnival will likely have very little impact if we don't consciously do things to build multipliers. Because when your import rate is high, your multipliers tend to be very close to one, which is almost nothing. So what that really means is you need to engage properly in the dialogue, and it couldn't be a national secret. Everybody would know. I would know. I would go. You would know. If it's done properly, the whole country would know, because you will explain to the country why it's important to come to Scarborough and engage in this conversation in the Tobago interest, but more importantly, in the wider national interest. This is important for the whole country, because Tobago would be teaching Trinidad a lesson as to how to develop Carnival in and of itself. So it wouldn't be a secret. Everybody would know. When you don't know, it means it didn't happen.
When we look at Tobago, do you all have town meetings that accommodate discussions about what can be done to improve the product that is the festivals in Tobago? Are town meetings held in Charlottesville, in Speyside, in Moriah, in Mason Hall? In terms of adding to the dialogue that is Tobago, is it that the THA is the embodiment of all knowledge and all wisdom, and they direct the part of everything that is happening in terms of festival, in terms of anything corporate and anything industrial, anything economic? Do you all have town meetings so Charlottesville has a voice, Moriah has a voice, and the agglomeration of these voices, or the sound that comes from all these different communities, it is heard and ventilated in a public space?
Well, the Fali goes around and holds these things he calls town meetings, but they don't have any significance, and they don't have any fundamental effect on either the way decisions are made, the quality of the decisions, and so on. Because town meetings cannot be the medium you use to determine what is to be done. You need a different kind of forum. You need a forum in which policy is being thought through by the representatives of the people in the THA. The people who are responsible to make policy have to be sitting in a way, in a mode that allows them to operate like almost like researchers. They'll hear from everybody. When people come in, they're not going to be coming to talk politics. They're coming to talk carnival. So they bring in their experience, they bring in their documentation, they're sharing the documentations and their proposals with the policymakers, with the lawmakers. And in that mode, ideas can be properly processed. You could understand what people are saying. Not be one small point here and one small point there. You allow people to talk for 10, 15 minutes and they submit the documents and so on. That sort of conversation is what is needed if you're going to make policy that will make a difference. So Fari has done 2 years of town meetings. And what did he get from it? Last year, the economy collapsed. I just got Thursday going the data from the CSO for the first 2 quarters for the Tobago economy. And the economy continues to collapse. Massive collapse. It's so much so that, in fact, um, we are we've lost a share of our labor force to Trinidad and the rest of the world. People left. So we had 32,000 persons in the Tobago labor force in 2022. And in 2021, in 2023, the first 2 quarters, that fell to 31,000. Now, that is only possible in a context in which you are making flawed policies about your investment program. You're guessing about it. You don't know what the community of investors want to do. You don't know what the public really understands and wants to support. And so you go ahead and do what you said. The THA is be all and all, king and queen. And the consequence of that is underinformed policy. And town halls can't fill the gap. Proper policy has to be made in a proper forum in which the dialogue is well structured to allow reflection and thought, learning, and the like. So they may have the town hall meetings, they do actually, but they're completely used from you're talking to a man who has a PhD in planning here, and I am telling you that is a waste of time when you're dealing with an economy like Tobago. That's why I say to Tobagonians and to the country, we need to change our mode of government if we're going to develop these countries. And that's true across the Caribbean. Tobago produces, this is Tobago you're talking about here, Farid. Tobago produces 4,000 US dollars per person per year. Jamaica, which is a nation unto itself, not a part of a nation like Tobago, produces 5,000. What do you think? Something is wrong with the way we're doing things. And Tobago is making exactly the same mistake Trinidad and Tobago made right after independence, which is to set up an authoritarian, autocratic process and expect development to come from it. We've learned in Trinidad and Tobago after 60 plus years that ain't carrying you nowhere. Growth of the GDP per capita of Trinidad and Tobago between independence and now it occurred at 2%. 2% per year. That ain't giving you any shot at achieving Vision 2030. No shot. Because if you and if you keep organizing yourselves this way, you're not going to be able to shift that upwards. And remember the rest of the world moving ahead too, Your target under Vision 2030 was 50,000 per year. You at 16.5, and you're growing at 2% per year. It'll take an eternity to catch up with the rest of the world, even if the rest of the world is just growing at 1%, and they're growing at faster than that. So I mean, it's as though the bricks stick in your ears, as Rashoti I used to say. You have to wake up and pay attention to the facts in front of you.
When we examine,
let me give you a troubling piece of data that
yeah,
Tobagonians should pay a lot of attention to. When I come on your show, I just walk with my data. In Tobago, right? In 2022, we had about 67% of the workers in Tobago with 1 to 4 O levels or less, all the way back into primary education, going all the way up to 70%. In the first and second quarter of 2023, that share increased dramatically to 74%. What does that tell you? We're going in the opposite direction to where we ought to be going. You're filling up your labor market with people who cannot help you to produce high quality, high productive output. That is why we are continually, perpetually dependent on Port of Spain for 82% of the funding needed to run the THA. We're not making any progress, and the reason we're not making progress is that we're doing the wrong things, and when we're trying to do the right thing, we do them the wrong way.
mm-hmm.
Isn't that frightening data?
Well, We can't fight data. The data reflects the truth.
And in Trinidad, don't think you're out. You have to smell the coffee down there too. You know, the corresponding figures in Trinidad are 58%. So
Yeah,
you're not out of the woods. It's a bad news down there too.
yeah,
So we
yeah.
need a robust national conversation informed by the researchers who are doing the work in Tobago and informed by the media people and everybody about where we're going with a country that is configured this way. We clearly are doing things that will not lead to the transformation of our economy, the diversification, as you like to say it in Trinidad, and development, as we like to say it in Tobago. We're not anywhere close, and we can't get close if we're going to communicate with the public through town meetings.
When you examine, we're now halfway through the term, right? In terms of Farley's term in Tobago, 2 years. Um, do you see any? Initially, when we had previous dialogues, we discussed the fact that there's naturally going to be a teething period within the development of this the term of office of this DHE or this current executive, that before it settles down. Are you of the view that the current executive has the building blocks necessary to sustain itself beyond this current term?
Well, no. And first of all, let me make the observation that this business of teething period and holiday and
Uh-huh.
honeymoon and so on, that are no relevance when you're talking about the political leaders of our country. When they are campaigning for office, they don't say, employ me and give me a year to learn the job at half pay. That's not how politicians talk.
Yeah.
They say we're going to come and sort out the way those who are kicking out don't know what they're doing. We know what we're doing. Give us a chance.
Yeah.
The folly of any idea that you could expect better from Farley and his team is evident in the data. The Tobago economy collapsed in 2022. And instead of facing the collapse and telling the public about it, Farley and his team didn't mention a word of that collapse in the budget presentation to the Minister of Finance. So much so, the Minister of Finance was misled into saying that the Tobago economy is recovering. So you can imagine the excitement with which I looked at the CSO data to see if there is evidence of any recovery. And the evidence from the CSO data is continued worsening decline. So clearly the Minister of Finance had to check the facts, and Farley and them irresponsible not to tell him the facts that they had. In addition to that observation, the evidence that we have in front of us is that we need radical reform of our education system and radical reform of our policies to build a stronger private sector in Tobago. The private sector in Tobago declined in its share of output, of employment in the last 2 quarters. These 2 quarters just gone here. Now, so now the private sector of Tobago contributes about 26% of jobs in Tobago compared to what was substantially higher in 2022. Now, what that tells you is that Farley and them governing with the head in the sand, because they're not talking to anybody. You can't get them on the phone. Everybody complaining. The collapse is taking place around them, and even if they know, they're not honest enough to admit it. They're looking for ways to say we're not responsible, even though the facts show that in 2022, right, 2021, after we clearly kicked out the PNM, the evidence came out that in 2021, the PNM began a recovery from the COVID collapse that put Tobago at $1.68 billion of output. And Farley and them in 2022 brought that down to 1.65. And from the evidence I'm seeing in this CSO data, That has fallen further this year, and they haven't done anything to stimulate a recovery. And don't forget, Carnival and its high import dependence cannot move that forward if you're doing Carnival the way they're doing it now. So where are we? They're going to just make Tobagonians more and more angry. And I think this is a one-term failed government. All the evidence points to that.
That's a very strong statement.
Very strong. Because the facts are, I'm a scientist, I deal with the facts. As I tell you, I just processed the data I got from the CSO and the state of the economy in Tobago. And all the evidence points to that. And all the evidence points to the fact that you're not dealing with a government that is keeping up to date with the science. So how are you going to get, if you're lucky, and some kind of comet or asteroid strike the opposition and block them from campaigning, then of course you might stand a chance. But as long as there is no extraterrestrial intervention, that's it for them. Everywhere I go in Tobago, man, people angry with this government. Everywhere I go, and I am all over Tobago all the time. And people angry with justification. It's not just partisan anger. People say, boy, you have to apologize to us for putting this government in power. We put in our handsness here. That's the kind of language people are using.
I can't have you here and not ask the question. Do you think that the PDP is now irrelevant in Tobago, or you think that the PDP, as an alternative to what the current executive, still subsists and exists in the minds of Tobagoans?
You mean Duke, the party Duke say you? You like comments? You like comments? If a man come to you and tell you, I own a party, put the party in power, nobody in Trinidad. Well, you saw what Trinidad has made of Duke in the local government election. Why would you expect Tobagonians? Tobagonians are a wise, thoughtful electorate. Why would you expect them to even think of the PDP as something outside a Duke's pocket? Careful with your insinuation about the lack of wisdom in Tobago with a question like that.
Dr. Jin, I want to ask you a quick question here. Based on the inputs that groupings in the different communities can address or can put forward to the government officials, and like they turn in a blind eye and think, how you go around that? Because I don't want to say it, but I lead a little group and we have put forward a lot of initiatives and a lot of ideas that are being, like it's a bureaucracy, like it's a red tape thing. I don't know what it is, but they like the idea, they like everything, but nothing is going forward. How you convince them from that level?
Well, authoritarian governments operate that way. I mean, if you talk to Fali, he's a veritable smart man. Anytime you sit down and talk to Fali, he tell you yes. It doesn't matter what you're telling him, he say yes. But he does nothing. That's why he and Duke fell out. Don't forget. Talk is cheap in an authoritarian system. In a real democracy, when the stakeholders come to the table, like you're saying with your group and so on, when they come to the table in a process, through a process in which careful thought must be given to what you're saying by representatives who are specialized in that work. They're not in the THA to be in the executive council. They're in the THA to make law, to guide policymaking. That's a specialist group. And once you don't set that up, you're talking to a king. And kings are notorious for having so little information, so little time to think, that they stumble right into the experience of Charles I and Marie Antoinette and Louis XIV in Britain and France. We saw what happened in Trinidad and Tobago under Williams. Remember they used to call Williams Deafy. Deafy died from suicide, after after being effectively hounded out of credibility by my generation, who wanted, who demanded empowerment to allow for proper public conversation about where policy must go and where the economy and society must go. And remember, the 70 revolution is the most successful social revolution the country has ever seen.
Yes.
We've had no other movement has created more social change anywhere in the Caribbean than those 51-day revolutionary moments. So we know that the people, if they're given an opportunity to participate in the governance process, can make a difference, can cause real development, social change, economic change, and so on. And the American experience before Trump was evidence of that. You know, what happened to Britain after Charles I is evidence of that. France made a lot of progress after Robespierre, after the execution of Marie Antoinette and Louis XIV, and Robespierre, the revolutionary. All those lost their necks, and France made some progress up until now, where they're grappling with the challenges of Macron. Once you set up systems to allow for wisdom to come from everybody, you have a real shot at making proper decision making. But you will find that under the authoritarian system we're running here in Tobago, you will go to them, you will talk to them on the phone, you will even go to their office and present documents. It will generally tend to go nowhere. But if you did the same thing in Trinidad, it ain't going nowhere either. The system is so obtuse from the point of view of full information and well-informed policy making that it takes you nowhere, and we're going to have to deal with that. You know, sooner or later we have to change that. We have to because of the fact that you can't develop the economy for real without sound policy making. Right? Markets in Trinidad and Tobago don't work the normal way because of this nature of the economy. That's a technical thing I don't want to go into now. But because of the way the economy works, and particularly because of the small share of capital we produce, markets don't work in a normal way. So you need policy intervention to make them work properly to drive development. And those policies have to be good policies, well-informed policies. And the way we are making policy now with our authoritarian cabinet, you have no chance of making sound policy.
Okay.
No
Dr. James, we want to thank you for appearing today.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for making the time that you make and for giving us the opportunity to hear your voice. We must do this again sometime, and I know you're ever so reliable. We will have you again. Thank you again.
Why don't I send you the data that I was just referring to? As a good journalist, you should want the data that the CSO put out. Every journalist should want the CSO data to see what it says about Trinidad and what it says about Tobago. So why don't you tell me send it for you?
We'll work on that data.
You'll work on it. All right. Good. Okay, Farid. Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, I have your number and I will call you. I need some assistance.
All right, Mark. Take care.
Okay.
Cool. Enjoy your evening. Blessings to the public.
Yes. Thank you, folks. You've been listening to our live hard talk session at Power 102 Digital Wednesday with Farid